Hello friends, welcome to a lecture series on CSR and in due course of our discussion on different dimensions of CSR. Today I'm going to present before you a very dynamic dimension of CSR, that is SBSR, Small Business Social Responsibility. Because when we look at CSR from different perspectives, this is also one of the perspectives which comes to the fore when we look at the size of business and we just think that how it will differ from that of a large business entity, or whether it is expected from them being a small business to contribute towards social responsibility or not, because that is a question. And of course there is no debate on this, that small business they have responsibility or not. Each and every business is basically acting as a stakeholder in the society, and their survival is dependent upon the contribution of society. So they are also supposed to take care of the social causes, the social concerns, the society in which they are residing. It is their responsibility, and I would say they are equally responsible. So in today's lecture of mine, I'll be discussing this very new dimension of CSR, which is known as SBSR, that is Small Business Social Responsibility, and I'll be giving you an overview of the general differences between the small businesses and large enterprises. Then we'll talk about that dimension of CSR, where SBSR is different from CSR in different terms. And for that there are different dimensions, like in terms of governance, in terms of approach to the business case, the language which is being used to reflect their concern towards CSR or their responsiveness towards social responsibility, who are the key stakeholders in case of small business houses, and what is the significance of trust, networks and social capital, and of course the tools which is being used in managing social responsibility by small business enterprises. So my dear learners, if you ask me as a teacher that sir, what is the difference between SBSR and CSR, I would say that in terms of the broad objective goals and the philosophy, the very philosophy of CSR, there is no such difference. But yes, the perspective is entirely different, because small businesses, they might not have that kind of huge setup like a corporate entity is having, that kind of framework which a corporate entity is having, the way they are having their the way those corporate entities they are managing their corporate governance affairs. Small businesses may not have that kind of formal setup, but yes, they do have the responsibility of taking care of the society in which they are residing. And eventually we'll talk about the possibility of development of a model which can help in systematically formalizing small business social responsibility. How can we formalize it? And when we say that how to formalize it, it means we agree that it is more or less it is running as a kind of informal system. They are doing everything for society, but there might be a possibility that they might not have recorded that in that way as the corporate entities, as the large business houses, they are basically reporting. So my dear learners, with this agenda of today's lecture, we shall be discussing about the small business responsibility, wherein we'll talk about what is the general difference between the SBSR, that is Small Business Social Responsibility, and that of CSR. So let us first understand what is small business responsibility. There is an implicit assumption if we look at the scholars who are working in the field of CSR, or even the media and the business debates which is being conducted on CSR, and they say that the subject under discussion belongs to large multinationals, publicly owned corporations. They have this kind of assumption, implicit assumption I would say, that it belongs to, it is basically the business of big business houses or the large business enterprises, and it is not of small business houses, which is actually not the truth, which is actually not the reality. So what we are basically going to discuss today is what is the responsibility of a small business in terms of the social responsibility. And there are basically these small business houses, these are a small proportion of the business community, and usually very often they are disregarded. But if we look at the significant contribution of these small business houses, it would be very surprising to note that 90% of the private sector organizations, they account for 60 to 70% of employment opportunity. So if we look at the people who are involved into the proportion of people who are involved into the private sector, we find that majority of people, they are deployed in a sector which is small in size. So 60 to 70% of employment opportunities, they are generated by these small business houses, these small business entity, and they are commonly known as small and medium sized enterprises. In some countries, they are known as SMEs, and if you ask about India as a country, I would say they are known as MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises. So my dear learners, looking at the extent of the contribution they are making towards generation of employment, of course the size is very huge. Their contribution is really commendable, because they are basically working for at least one cause of society, that is employment generation. They are generating employment for society at large, and that too a major chunk is getting employment from these business houses. Now the question comes, who are they? How to define these SMEs? How do we define these small and medium enterprises, or what we call as MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises? So definition of small business, they basically they differ across the regions and sectors, and usually taking the form of quantitative indicators such as employment, investment and turnover. So regardless of the region in which we are discussing, either they are differentiating these small business houses from that of their large counterparts in terms of employment generation, or in terms of investment they have made, or turnover, or even the combination of all three can be present in some of the countries. So I am not giving any country specific data, I am avoiding that because we are taking this topic in global perspective. So it is not needed here to discuss that what is the size of investment if we take Indian perspective into consideration, which companies are regarded as micro, which units are regarded as micro, and which one are regarded as small and medium enterprises. So my dear learners, basically their differentiation is their classification is either based on employment generation by those entities, or the investment which they have made into their business, and turnover, or even the combination of these can be. So if their investment, employment and turnover is very small, then of course they are known as micro organizations. If they are working at moderate level or lower level, they are basically becoming small slightly ahead of micro, but less than the moderate investment. And if they are investing at moderate level, they are moderate medium enterprises. And the next one is basically when we talk about MSMEs, micro, small and medium. So either they are micro, or they are small, or they are medium, and if they are not falling in any of these categories, they are regarded as large organizations or large entities, which are basically established in terms of corporate structure, or they have a corporate framework. So one of the main issues with it is the differentiation based on a single quality of small businesses, that is its degree of smallness, that to what extent they are small and how small they are. And for that, when I was referring to some of the researches, I found one very interesting very interesting piece of research by Harvey and Lee. And they stated that while different definitions are adopted, they do not fundamentally affect the key issues pertinent to SMEs. So Harvey and Lee, they have very eloquently explained this very idea, that regardless of their size, regardless of the extent to which they are involved in terms of investment, employment and turnover, they are fundamentally, they are basically the same. Their business is the same, and they are working in the society with the same objective, because their motive is to do some business, to make some profit, and to act responsibly. Of course, that is the ultimate goal. So our concern with CSR as it relates to smaller businesses, when I was looking at small business social responsibility, so I started looking at literature from a very different point of view, that is how these small business houses, they are contributing towards the social responsibility. And researchers, they frame this in terms of emerging concept of SBSR, and we found this term repeatedly used, that there is an emerging concept of small business social responsibility. So I thought it appropriate to discuss with you all that what these small business houses are, and in what way their responsibility towards society differs from that of large business houses. So the literature, the relevant literature on the topic on which it is drawn is basically diverse. We find a diversity, huge diversity into the relevant literature, and it also covers work on business ethics, corporate governance, and corporate responsibility. So multiple dimensions are there. There is a lot of diversity into the relevant literature which is available. And it should also be pointed out that SMEs are an extraordinarily diverse group and of necessity. So they are extraordinary, they are working in a very extraordinarily manner, and of course they are the necessity of our society, because they are not only contributing towards the employment but also towards the export growth, also the growth of exports as well. So although there are variations, not least according to sector, region and size of SME, it is also the case that the distinction between large and small firm is not complete. Some smaller firms have typically large firm characteristics and vice versa. So you can find some characteristics of small business houses into a large business framework, and vice versa. Opposite of that also is available, because depending on the extent of involvement these firms have, they are going to have their own way of functioning. Now, after giving you a brief introduction of what small business enterprises are, because we are going to talk about small business social responsibility, we got a fair idea that we are not talking about a corporate setup, a business house which is working as a corporate entity. We are going to talk about the SMEs, that is small and medium enterprises. So the first and the foremost question which comes in front of us is that should we exclude them from the framework of social responsibility? Answer is no. They are very much the part and parcel of society, and they do have the responsibility towards the society. So it is not the size which matters, it is the entity. Every entity is significant, every entity is important when we take the entire society as a family. Because if you ask about the Indian scenario, we believe into the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, where we assume that where we feel that the entire world is our family, and each and every one is acting as a family member. So of course we have to have that feeling towards our other stakeholders. So the same is applicable on artificial entities also. So companies should also give due recognition and significance and importance to even the small business enterprises. So no one is less when it comes to their contribution. So every big contribution starts from a very small step. So we should not forget the significance of a small step, the smaller contributions. So keeping this in mind, that we should have a clarity that yes, regardless of the size of business enterprise, each and every business has a responsibility towards society in which we are residing. Now we should look at the relevant literature, that the literature on CSR, what exactly it speaks when we talk about the size of, when we look at it from the perspective of size of business, when we look at the social responsibility of a business when the size of business is small. So what literature says? Literature says that small businesses are significant, they are important. It is well supported by the relevant literature that small businesses, they are important, and in previous studies they have been recognized and appreciated for creating export opportunities. Not only employment but also export opportunity. They have contributed towards the export growth of a nation. Not only employment and export but also for innovation and for effective and efficient solutions to important global problems. So some of the researchers, they have pointed out that there are instances where the small business houses, they have contributed significantly for innovation and for effective and efficient solution to important global problems. And research suggests that these include in the topics, the problems ranging from environmental degradation to unemployment and many other social issues which are concerned or which are related to our communities and development. So their range is very wide when it comes to their contribution. So they have been, these small business houses, they have been contributed, they have been contributing towards the employment generation, they have been contributing towards solving the problem of unemployment, they have been solving the problem of environmental degradation and many more. So they are nowhere less when it comes to their to evaluating their contribution towards social responsibility. And consequently, policies related to small businesses, they have occupied a relatively prominent position when we look at the global agenda for economic growth and regeneration. So the global agenda for economic growth and regeneration is finding that there is a significant contribution of small business enterprises as well. So policies related to those small businesses, they have occupied a very relevant and prominent position in the global agenda. So they are there into the agenda of agenda when we look at the global perspective, when we look at the international perspective for economic growth and regeneration. So this is nowhere least because most private sector employees work in small businesses. With this very idea, we started our discussion on the topic that they are contributing approximately 60 to 70% of the workforce. They are contributing in terms of generating employment to more than 60 to 70% people. Now the question comes, if they are contributing significantly, it means they are nonetheless from those large business enterprises. So the question comes, if they are the same, their objective is the same, their functioning is identical, then what is the point of coming up with another acronym called SBSR? Can't we go ahead with the same idea of CSR? Answer is no. We need to look at these business houses from the perspective of SBSR also, small business social responsibility, because they are significantly different from large enterprises in certain parameters. And what are those parameters? That I am going to tell you. They may be different. See, their objective, their goal, their impact is almost the same, but it is only the way in which they are operating, the way in which they are reporting their social responsiveness, that is something which is different. So those point of differences I am going to present before you with the support of the relevant literature, because whatever I am presenting here, it is basically supported by the relevant researches which are being conducted in the field of CSR. And I found that according to Britting, small businesses can be differentiated from large enterprises based on two characteristics. So Britting basically talked about differentiating small and large enterprises based on two important characteristics. The first one was small scale decentralization and the second one was flat organizational hierarchy. So they were talking about they took these two perspectives into account, that if you have to differentiate, if you have to find, if you have to draw a line of difference between the large and small enterprises, the first difference is of small scale decentralization. That at small scale there is of course decentralization is something which is different as that in case of large business enterprises, and there is a flat organizational hierarchy in small business enterprises. The organizational hierarchy is almost flat. So these were the two differences which were basically highlighted by the Britting, and the second one was by Van Hoon. Van Hoon distinguished small businesses from large firms through 5 idiosyncratic features. So they basically went a step ahead and differentiated small firms with that of their large counterparts on the basis of 5 idiosyncratic features. And what were those idiosyncratic features that I am going to tell you? The first one was a relatively limited number of products. That the number of products with which they are dealing, these small business enterprises, they are dealing, that is limited in number. So we understand that size matters, and in case of big business enterprises, they might be dealing with a huge product line. They may have n number of items into their one product line, and dealing with n number of product lines, making a very complex product mix for those companies. So, but in case of small companies, the first idiosyncratic feature which was highlighted by Van Hoon was that it is a relatively limited number of product, which is the first point of difference between the small and big business enterprises. The second one is technologies and know-how. Of course, the kind of technology they are using, that also creates a point of difference. Technologies and know-how. In case of big business houses or large business enterprises, the technology which they are using, that is basically of a high grade, whereas in case of small business enterprises, they might be using the homegrown technology or their own know-how to deal with those business operations. The third one is relatively limited resources and capabilities. Of course, this is another point. Relatively limited resources and capabilities are there in case of small business enterprises. And the next one is an underdeveloped management system, because they are evolving in nature. So their management system, their administrative procedures and techniques must be in a evolving stage. I would not use the term underdeveloped, but since it is the term which is used by the researcher, so we have to use the same word here. So an underdeveloped management system or administrative procedures and techniques, that is also a point of difference between the small and large business enterprises. And the next one is a disorganized and informal management style. This is the point which we need to discuss. We should take a pause here and have a discussion on this, that this is the point that requires some elaboration, that they are having a disorganized and informal management style. They are not that organized as these big business houses are. They don't have everything documented. So they are basically dealing with the informal management style also. So at times they are basically going ahead with the informal management style. Like suppose if they have to implement a certain task, the owner himself may talk to the employee, may call the worker at the ground and ask that, see, this is the work which need to be done, because their span of control is very limited. So they may look disorganized. They may reflect the application of informal management style, but that is obvious also because of size of business. And senior managers and their relatives and friends, they are basically the owners and founders of the firm. This is basically the biggest difference between the small and large business enterprises, because senior managers and or their relatives and friends, they basically they have the ownership, and they are the founders of the firm, and they have personal involvement into each and every operation of the business. So making this entire task, the entire business, giving it a color of informal system. So senior managers and their relatives, of course, they are there. So this is basically the line of difference. So this was a very comprehensive classification given by the Van Hoon, where the author has distinguished small businesses from large firms through 5 idiosyncratic features, and they are basically sufficiently they are explaining the points of differences. But what contemporary research indicate? Contemporary research on SBSR tends to cast a more positive light on these special features, reflecting on the relative advantages of small businesses. For instance, there is a researcher called Perini et al. They have described small businesses as being generally independent, multitasking and cash limited. So they basically feel that these small businesses, they are into multitasking, they are generally independent and cash limited. So there are some other researches also which I'll be discussing or presenting before you in due course of my discussion. So I hope that you got a fair idea of what exactly SBSR means. So with this, I'm ending this lecture of mine. I hope you must have enjoyed today's lecture of mine. Thank you so much.